Welcome to the Perspectives with Catherine Toon podcast.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Perspectives with Catherine Toon. And I have a new guest that I am actually really excited. I've been waiting for this interview. Welcome, David Tensen. It's so good to have you on.
Thanks, Catherine. Great to be here with you.
It's wonderful. I kind of learned about David through Paul Young, who quotes a lot of your poetry. And boy, life-giving poetry and funny and spunky and gritty and good, and which challenges us. But you just came out with a brand new book. Let me make sure I'm quoting it correctly, because I'll get like the first part and then the tagline. Let me see. So let's see. Decenter everything: the unconventional approach to eldering in an age of immaturity. That is actually a great sort of summary with this brand new work. What prompted you to write this book, David?
It's probably a combination of things. Personally, at the stage and age of life, my children, I've got two that have graduated high school. I've got three kids, 21, 17, and 15. And so we're at that stage of life where they're largely independent, and we're talking about, what happens after college or apprenticeships when they leave home, and talking with my wife, Natalie, and just about that next stage of life, what that would be like. And part of our own ethos or framework around parenting and development, my wife's was a counselor and has a degree in social sciences. And so at the forefront of some of our discussion is often like, well, what would it be like afterwards? But what sort of people would we want to become like? And then there was also this undercurrent now with the cost of housing double what it was even 5 years ago, and absolutely tragically unaffordable for our children. Multi-generational living is really becoming a non-option for some. And
Truly.
and I don't see that as a bad thing. A lot of stuff I write in this book, and I declare at the start, this is a Western problem. Our Eastern friends in Asia and other parts of the world don't suffer in the same way. When I say suffer, they don't have a lot of the same immaturity, but
have this malady.
Yeah. So they live in multi-generational homes, and all the research around what that looks like when it's good and healthy is phenomenal. The length of life and connection, and there's the markers, are very high in all the health areas. So part of it is personal. Part of it is getting to that age. I work in aged care a couple days a week as a chaplain in aged care and hospice care here. So I'm really working with people that are in the winter stage of life and, on their last days and weeks. We have about 40 deaths a year at our facility, which is a chaplain and a spiritual care worker. That's part of your role, is to walk and journey through that. So part of it was informed by that. That they would be the sort of the main things. Also going out and looking for literature and books on, like, okay, there's plenty on parenting, Catherine. We've been able to find a plethora of books and material on how to parent now. I looked at the curve of publication in the last 20, 30 years in parenting, and it's astronomical. Before we press record, I told you my local university library, I went through their search engine, and there was 250,000 books and articles on parenting, 250,000. And there was only 1,000 on eldering. So hard to find things, And I thought, there's a gap here. And I know for myself, I'm surrounded by some really good people, families, men and women, who are have been really intentional with their parenting, read the books, been self-sacrificing in the best kind of way, have done all the things. And there's never a guarantee that your kids work out as these perfect children. That's not the point. The point is some of the effort that you put in, and do that conscientiously. And I think one of the best gifts we can give our kids is to continue to grow up, and
Yes.
mature psychologically, spiritually, emotionally. So I'm talking to friends and stuff, and we're talking about next stage of life. And a lot of us have agreed, and this is not an indictment, but a lot of them have said, I feel like I've outmatured my boomer parents. Like, I feel like I'm older.
Wow.
I feel like I've matched. I'm having to parent my parents now.
Wow.
I don't want I don't want to be the kind of people my parents are. So that led me down a stack of research, and of course that's not universal. That's they're just
Yeah.
anecdotes and
Of
stories
course.
along the way, but it's something I
Sure.
began to hear a lot of, and I thought, what's behind that? And so the book really opens up with, here's where we are, this perfect storm. And I know
Yeah.
your background in medicine, you get this. We are living a
Yeah.
long time thanks to medicine, right?
We are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
in the year 1900, if you were living in North America, the average age of a male was 51, 53 for a female person of color. You'd be lucky to see 40. Times have changed. We're living in Terra
Yeah.
80s. Penicillin added 15 years to the average life. So we've never
Truly.
been here before, having this much wealth, this much
Mm-hmm.
resource, this much knowledge available to us and information, and living this long. What are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we
Yeah.
continue to grow up, or
Yeah.
do we just hit midlife and plateau and hope that we can live, as Jung said, we can live the
Yeah.
afternoon of our life on the morning schedule? And I would say no. I say
Wow.
there is a dearth. We don't have elders. We're an elderless generation.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the spark.
David, yeah, that's great. When people hear the term elders from a Christian perspective, we probably are thinking of something in the church, and there's certainly overlap. But when you're talking about eldering, help us with that term. What are you meaning by
Yeah,
that?
that's a great question. And there's a chapter in the book about that, because a lot of us that have come
Yeah,
from church background, we think of elders as people in
right.
the church that are perhaps ticked some behavioral boxes, ticked some practical boxes. Um,
Hmm.
and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about it
Hmm.
more in the psychological, spiritual, emotional terminology, that these are people who've walked through life stages of um, ticked a lot of the maturity boxes along the way. When they were a
Hmm.
child, they were a child.
Hmm.
When they were in the adult stage, they were adults. When they were parenting, caregiving, they did
Yeah.
that well. And eventually, post caregiving or parenting,
Hmm.
uh, they continued to grow up. And so
Yeah.
I use the book's called Decenter Everything, because the whole idea on decentering is to move things that have been central and most important in your life, and to move them out into the edges, and to eventually learn. And when you're in the presence of true elders, you feel loved, you feel belonging, you feel not judged, you feel safe, you feel secure, you don't feel like you're competing with them, um, you feel valuable. And I don't kind of give a definition of this is definitely what an elder is. And part of that
Hmm.
is, uh, I think, contextually, for me to write out here's what an elder is and does would be a bit of an indictment on the context. Like, I'm not a 72-year-old African American woman living in Louisiana.
Hmm.
What that
Right.
looks like there and here as a white guy in his early 70s on the Sunshine Coast in Australia is different to what it might look like in Africa,
Hmm.
or all those. So I kind of present a stack of questions. The book's a provocation more than anything, and
Yeah.
invites us to say, okay, looking and considering myself, who do I want to become as I continue to move through into the autumn and the winter stages of life?
Hmm.
Um, all things going well,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So it's not the same as holding the office of an elder at a church. I was an
Right.
elder in our church at 22 because I had good
Right.
administration skills. The pastor could see that I
Mhm.
felt a calling. I had a leadership position in the church on the music director and other things. So, I was practically, but was I mature? No chance. I was like, please
Mhm.
don't come to me
Okay.
for advice. I'm 22.
Right.
Yeah. So I try to break away from
Yeah.
that. Um,
No, which is helpful, uh, but and just sort of and I love how you defined it in terms of how it makes, because really when you were talking about how you were defining it as we're not defining it, but just talking about it, the context that we're talking about it, was how it makes the one being eldered feel, right? So I feel safe, I feel not judged, I feel listened to, I feel heard. The thing I didn't hear you say, but you do say in the book is sort of um, emptying out ourselves to champion the other, right? And that and so, which is beautiful because that leaves it open to, if you're that 72-year-old Black woman in Louisiana, what that looks like for you versus, your culture, your age, and all that. And which is beautiful. And I love the fact that it's a provocation because you have questions at the end of each chapter to help that us in our process in sort of grappling with this, because these are mature things. This is not you don't you're not an elder to look sexy. You're it's like it's really not about you. It's about the other and how can I partner with the other. I'm going to pull up my notes my little cheat sheet here. So you talk about decentering and you talk about decentering God, which is we'll get back to being heard, which is so huge. Decenter knowing, decenter death. I love that. Decenter consumption. We're such in Western world. We're such a conspicuous consumption, and the people with the money, which a lot of times tend to be these older brackets, are we let's play now versus and it's good to play. Please play, but it's not all about play. That's not the center of the thing. So whichever one of those that you want to tackle, whatever you're in the mood for, we can talk about, or I can pick one
you
for
can
you.
pick one.
So whatever
Feel
you'd like to
free.
do.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me scan the list again and get my little eyeballs on it. So why don't we do let's do being heard
Hmm.
first. I'm feeling that
All
one.
right.
So talk about this decentering, this need to be heard, and then tell us a little bit, if you would. Sorry, I'm being
No,
bossy here.
it's your
If you
podcast. Go
would,
for
yeah,
it.
well, to what you kind of mean by decentering,
Okay.
and so we can follow a little
Decentering
better.
is a term is uncommon, and I know it was a risk doing that. And when my 15-year-old asked me what the book was about, I said, "Look, it's about growing older and not being a dick." But I didn't want to call it that. Um,
I love
I know,
that. Oh my god, that might have
I
gotten you
know.
some more.
I've thought about a second version without some of the theology as something that would be to a broader audience, even though the theology is just in one chapter. But um,
Yeah.
uh, so I say that because one of the things that people will run into, one of the things I used to run into when I was itinerant and talking, and I would talk through, I'm a big fan of the life models maturity scale and developmental. It's like a maturity developmental framework. Jim Wilder at the Life Model and the team there put it together. And when I talk about that, and I'd say, we go from caregiving to eldering in this life
Mhm.
stage. Um, you know, one of the things that we learn to do is we should have learnt by now is just to really listen well. Like you should have learnt that way back in adult stage before you were in caregiving, when it was you and a significant other. That was the time you should have learnt to listen really
Yeah.
well. And I would have people really, really often, Catherine would say, the young people today, they don't want to listen to me. We have all this wisdom, and nobody wants to listen to what I have to say. And there was a genuine
Hmm.
lament and a grief with
Yeah.
that, and I felt that. I was
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
I hear you, I hear you. But at the same time, I would also say, why haven't you been heard? Why is it now you feel that you need to be heard? Um, were you not heard as a child? Like, where is this wound coming from? Because in a
Hmm.
healthy,
Hmm.
mature, attached, healed way, we, as the joke says, God gave you 2 ears and only one mouth, so you should always listen twice as much as you
Hmm.
speak. But this desire to
Right.
be seen and heard is intrinsic. But if a mature and the irony centered, a mature person who knows their source and knows who they are and have learnt where their intrinsic value comes from, and for us who believe in Christ and have a
Hmm.
relationship, that's easy to find. Uh, Prayer is a
Hmm.
great practice for this of being heard. But for those that do that's okay. But for those that don't have that, there's still this desire to be heard, and
Hmm.
and there was a grief. So at one point I said, I get it. That sounds painful, but then also it's not about you. You've been around for decades.
Thank you.
Like, who hasn't listened to you? Find people to listen to you. But if you want to build relationship and something that's of worth and have conversation and change your
Hmm.
life, learn
Hmm.
how to listen.
Hmm. Yeah.
I quote Roosevelt, and I don't know if it's his quote, but I couldn't find who it was because it's thrown around a lot. It's one of those tropes. It says, people
Hmm.
don't care
Right.
how much you know until they know how much you care. And I open that
Wow.
chapter with a
Yeah.
story of a lady who's a young mother who's with her child and is visiting her mum. And her mum is constantly telling her how to parent and is not listening to her, not asking her how it's going. And that lady casts her mind back to the cafe she was in a few days beforehand, where she saw this grandmother and a granddaughter sit and have this conversation, and how leaned in the grandmother was, and how seen the girl felt. And she talked for as long as she needed to, and then she said to grandma, "What do you think?" You know. So there's this.
Wow.
That is appealing, and I think that's the gift of elders. And interesting, if you look at indigenous and tribal, uh, you know,
Hmm.
kind of communities, you go
Hmm.
to an elder to get wisdom and you
Yeah.
might talk for 20 minutes and the elder says, yeah, I think you should take that job.
Hmm.
Does that make sense? So we have to decenter
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
lower the bar on being heard all the time and deal with whatever it is in us that feels like I am important when I am heard. Now I hear, and I've written poetry about people who had no voice and their voice was always stolen from them. If that's you,
Hmm.
see a therapist about that. don't look for
Yeah.
your
Yeah. Get
don't
that
look for
dealt
the
with.
younger
Hmm.
generations to finally be your audience. um, they're hard work, but that's the provocation, because the elders we need are those who can listen well, absorb a lot, have people feel seen and heard, um, give people the gift
Hmm.
that they were given for decades, and then
Hmm. Yeah.
and then if there's
Yeah.
opportunity, you impart some wisdom. Mm.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And listening, I mean, listening without an agenda, listening in order to understand, right? And giving that space, which is beautiful. It's interesting because, I mean, in some of those cases with the people that have had wounds with this, this is something generally generationally that's been an issue, but we are responsible for ourselves to get ourselves and our pain points dealt with so that we can actually show up as who we were created show up for, and particularly in this later season when the baton's been passed for us to start to pour into others in a way that is beautiful. And I love that you equated that, because I think a lot of times, particularly in a kind of social media age where everybody and their dog has a podcast and everybody and their dog's writing a book, and it's good and it's it's what it is. And so, a lot of times when we're equating our significance with the need to be heard, it's like when you're not expressed your opinion, it's not asked for or whatever, does that make me any less, right? So of course not. But a lot of times we feel that way, right? And so this means that, yeah, we've got some junk to deal with internally, right? So yeah, that's wonderful, and I love that picture that you gave of the two different older people that were, the good listener and the not good listener. So that just really helpful. Yeah. Mhm.
As your children move into adult stage. And personally, I think that's, 13, 14 is early adulthood. I mean, teenage, that's all fine. We can use that as a demographic marker. But all my kids
Mhm.
are young adults, the 21-year-old, the 17-year-old, the
Yeah.
15-year-old. Um, and the invitation for my wife and I now is to see how we can build good adult to adult relationships. So in
Yeah.
that chapter as well, I present what has been one of the most popular parts of the book that people come back and comment on. I really liked this part, and that is I um, present some teachings that we use in chaplaincy and hospice chaplaincy because I'm paid to listen. I mean, if you're a therapist, you're paid to listen.
Yeah.
Uh,
I do a ton of coaching, just so
yes, so
FYI.
you get
So,
it.
yep,
Yeah, the
yep.
the magic's in
Yep.
the listening and listening well, right?
Oh, for sure.
100%. And sometimes you got to go. I had to do courses, micro skills on active listening during some of my
Mm.
training. But I present this teaching on companioning and Alan Wolflet's 11 tenets of companioning. And I'll read a couple out here for the listeners. And these were built
Yeah.
around how to be present for those who are grieving, particularly loss.
Mm.
And
Oh, good.
and I like the idea. I run some death cafes at our university, and we talk about this a little bit. The death cafes where you drink
It's
tea,
like,
eat cake, and talk about death in a safe,
mhm.
non-agendered way. That
Wow.
because we
Wow.
that's another chapter, but we live with this denial of it. So I present this there as well. How do you be with somebody who's grieving? Here are a
Mhm.
few of the tenets, and there's 11 of them. And yeah, this is not my work. This is from Alan Wolflet. But tenet 5: companioning is about bearing witness to the struggles of others. It's not about judging or directing those struggles. Tenet 6: companioning is about walking alongside, not about leading. Tenet 2: companioning is about going to the wilderness of the soul with another human being. It's not about thinking you're responsible for finding a way out. Number 3: companioning is about honoring the spirit. It's not about focusing on the intellect. So it's very much about companioning, being alongside somebody and not rescuing, not having to fix. And I think it's a
Yeah.
beautiful posture and goal to hold, uh,
Mm.
as an elder. And I do believe we can practice eldering at any age. I think we can practice early. I think it should come to fruition, and it
Mhm.
shouldn't be expected that we are true elders until we reach some of these chronological ages and we've ticked some of the other maturity markers. We've been through them. All that said, even as I was writing drafts and had beta readers, a lady from um, Africa said her 20-year-old son was had been sort of selected as a young elder in their tribe. And so that means that
Wow.
he will spend the next few decades getting particular training so that when he's older, he can take up that true role of being an
Wow.
elder. And I think that's fantastic, you know.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's cool.
Yeah. Wow. That's super
Mm.
cool. Wow. Wow. Well, that's brilliant. What about transitioning? What about decentering God? That was probably the hardest one
Mm.
for me. So
Why
I
did you
love
find
the
it hard?
challenge.
What did you find hard about it?
Well, as in my mindset,
Mm.
he's the place that I would say I center my life around. So as I roll with what comes up, I'm constantly going back to him. What do you think? How should I look at this? What do I need to own? What don't I need to own? those kind of conversations. So it's a very sort of relational, and I felt like I got it, and then I didn't get it, and then I got it, and then I did. So which is good. So it means so I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
So and so this is just help us with what you mean by that. And I know, and this is the place where you went into Trinitarian theology, which was great. Enjoyed that. Um, uh, so just help us with what you mean by that.
Mhm.
And probably the thing, just to give a heads up, that helped me the most with that was that example you gave of talking to someone across the table that you love and you really want connection with, and you've got this big glorious thing of flowers that's in the middle that you can't move. And that kind of helped me some, but just not that it's about me, but I figure if there's a struggle there, someone else may
No,
be
no.
grappling.
I
So
asked
help
for
us with it.
your thoughts, so yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Uh, the picture has helped. The picture has helped a lot. That illustration of couple that, if we go out for dinner and we want to connect and we haven't seen each other for a long time, but we get onto this, they bring us to a table. We're like, wow, look at this flower, it's amazing. But the vase is stuck in the center of the table. So for those watching the video, if I put my big microphone between us, we're like, oh, that's a really nice microphone. The problem is we can't really be comfortable, and there's no loving gaze, there's no connection.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
it's not that the flowers aren't beautiful. It's not that the flowers aren't important. It's not that their smell and their aroma adds to it. It's just that they now um, uh, make it very difficult for us to really see each other. And decentering would be getting that vase and moving it to the edge of that. So it's still present. It's still important. It hasn't lost its value if it's not in the middle. And that's one of the things I think is a marker of those who are able to decenter, is you
Good.
don't have to be in the middle of the circle to be important, valued, or belong. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
So this is this idea with God, and some of the phrasing I use, which people would have heard before, is that your image or thoughts of God are not God. Now, Catherine, I've only met you for
That's
half
good.
an hour, and whatever I think of you isn't you,
Yeah.
and your partner, whatever my wife thinks of me, isn't me. I am me. So even
Right.
somebody you're deeply intimate with and closer to than anyone else, whatever my wife thinks of me does affect our relationship. I'm not going to lie. What the way I think of her affects that. The image I have of her affects that.
Mhm.
But that is not her. And whatever we think of God and imagine of God and image of God and idolize God is not God. So we kind of then move to this almost apophatic term, which means it's kind of like a negative theology. It's
Mhm.
identifying something by saying what they're not. So
Right.
we move into this different kind of approach and dance with God, where we let God be God, and we are not the final word of God. And most importantly, interrelationally with mature people, is I will not allow my opinion and view of God to get in the way of how I see God. That allows for curiosity and growth and
So good.
maturity, but it
Good.
also doesn't get
Yep.
in the way of
In the
me and
way.
others. Can God come to me, as Paula Darcy said, can God come to me disguised as life itself? Or do I need God to come to
Wow,
me
it's
in a
beautiful.
particular way? Um,
So to kind of like, do I need him to come in my box, my
of
way of
course.
viewing
Hmm.
him? And then, okay,
So,
like that.
yeah. And
That's
look,
good.
I love how William Paul Young says that if you put God in a box, he'll crawl into that to be with you. So I fundamentally think at the beginning of life, as
That's
you're
so
building
good.
your container and construct around God, I think it's important to have
Mhm.
something. A lot of the things I'm writing about this book is very much second half of life, post middle life, post caregiving and parenting kind of thoughts. So at the start, I've got my son who we talk theology and God and Bible with, etc. He's having to build something, and I want him to build something solid to test
Yeah.
and to walk with. But at the same time, sort of say, just be prepared to hold some of this loosely, you know, um,
Good.
because
It's
whatever we
good.
think of him is not him. And that allows God to be an
That's
other,
really
and it
good.
allows us to be other. So on the screen here, this is the chapter. I've got a couple of pictures here for those listening. That's the Celtic knot, which is a picture of the Trinity, and also this perichoresis kind of divine dance. Even in the symbolism of the Trinity, Catherine,
Hmm.
are
Hmm.
there's holes. There's a gap in the middle. The
Yes.
Trinity, I argue in the book for us to consider, is that the Trinity is a decentered entity in that it's the Father, Son, and Spirit in a divine dance, a
Hmm.
perichoresis. You could imagine them
Hmm.
holding hands, but nothing is in the middle. Nothing
Yeah,
is in the
that's
middle. So
really
God
interesting.
is decentered. And some people say, but I'm in the middle. And I think that's nice. It's very
Wow.
anthropocentric, it's very human centered. And I've seen
Mm.
innocent preachers that say, you're in the middle of the Trinity and they're dancing around you. Now, you may need to hear that because you've been told you're an absolutely worthless piece of whatever growing up. That's
Mhm.
fine for a season. Eventually, though, the centrifugal force should decenter you and you should
Right.
find yourself where you really belong, and that's in Christ, in the Trinity, with
Right.
one hand with the Father,
Yeah.
one hand with the Holy Spirit, emptying out in the canonic
Beautiful.
relationship with one another. So that allows me to be in Christ and see the Father and see the Spirit and see everybody else with a loving, unhindered gaze, and hold how God comes to me loosely. And I'll share a quick little story about that,
Good.
why that's been important to me. Uh,
Yeah.
when I went to Japan a couple of months ago with my daughter for her 21st, and we lived in Japan as missionaries about 17 years ago, and it was the middle of summer there, and it's stinking hot in Japan. Like humidity is off the charts, hotter than Australia, and uncomfortable. So I got out early in the morning,
That's hard to
early
imagine.
riser. I know it is, and I was in Kyoto, and I walked up towards some of the hills, and I found this huge set of stairs, and I thought I read on TripAdvisor or something, there's a great view at the top, so I said I'll walk up there, and there was a man on his way up those stairs as well. Now, during my time at Japan, something within me had said, we were here 17 years ago. We sold up and sold out to come here and to love and to serve these people. I don't know if I've made any difference. I realized when I got there, I hadn't really reconciled some of the loss and the grief that I had. So I walked up the stairs and
Mm.
went to the top and sweated out. And then as I came down, I could hear this flute, this beautiful flute playing. And the man who I passed on the way past, an elderly gentleman, was playing this few notes, but very melodic, to this shrine, um, which was kind of like a threshold shrine because the stairs had
Mhm.
two sections. And I sat in his periphery, a little off. No one else is around, and I sat and I
Mhm.
was like, I could just feel something come up, and I said, "Okay, Holy Spirit, what's going on here?" And he says, "This is for you, David. This is this song is for you. It's a song of grief for what you haven't grieved, what you haven't let go of, what you
Oh,
haven't reconciled." And I sat there, and a Shinto man with his flute playing to a shrine
mm.
ministered to me. God came to me in that moment.
Wow.
It wasn't in a
Wow.
church, wasn't at an altar call. And I
Right.
thought in retrospect, I would have kicked my ass if I heard that, heard myself say that 20 years ago, because it would have sounded heretical.
Right.
That's
Right.
the devil. That's
Right.
whatever. But
Right.
because I've decentered all these
It's the
ideas,
demonic.
yeah,
Yeah.
I still have a
Yeah.
Christ
Mhm.
centered, I think it's the most beautiful, wonderful,
Yeah.
meaningful picture for me. But it doesn't stop God coming to me through these things. The Imago Dei is
Through the
everywhere.
Shinto man who's
Yes. Yeah.
playing this melody to heal your
Yeah.
heart.
Yep.
Wow. And how that's just
Mm.
beautiful. That's
It was
beautiful.
beautiful for me.
Wow. Yeah, well, it's beautiful to hear and to think if you hadn't decentered, that would not fit in your grid.
No way.
Like, right, you may have to, cast something out on the way down or
Yeah, be
something.
speaking on tongues, canceling whatever spirit he's conjuring up, which I may have felt I
Right.
needed to do. Not that it ever worked, but I thought, oh, I was grateful for the journey God had taken me on and for
Wow.
those that had been elders and
Wow.
people around me who have said, you can find God if you look around. God is
Yeah.
om-
Of
omnipresent.
course.
You know,
We say
I
that,
know.
but then we're like, "Yeah,
Doesn't
but,"
fit my
right?
box. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Oh, that's beautiful. That's really helpful. Yeah, that's really helpful. That's wow, that's beautiful. And I love the fact that you even brought up, the different symbols because they do have holes because there's space, there's possibility, there's an expression that we haven't been able um, to grab a hold of yet, which is, and when you think about it, like if we have this God and we've kind of got him all figured out, he's not much of a God, So I love that.
Mm.
That's beautiful. Wow, that's beautiful. What has been? Have you received much pushback at all from this or criticism from it?
Um.
Which would
I
be kind of hard to imagine, but
Yeah. Look, I haven't. I've actually one of the things that's been really encouraging is that this book has reached a lot of men, and I've had a lot of men
oh,
reach out.
nice.
Now, I say that because you're
Wow.
an author. You know that stats show women read more books than men, and so I've had. Yesterday, I had a uh, interview with somebody and from Texas, and they're like, "Oh, do you know this church here?" I was like, "No." Nah. They're like, "Oh, well, they're the ones that told me about your book. Their eldership and some of their team are reading it." And I was like, "Oh." And then I had quite a number of men's groups reach out, and a lot of men. So that's been important and really lovely for
I
me
love
because
that.
I think everybody deserves the journey to maturity, but I think it's a little harder for men, quite honestly. And I'll talk to you as a doctor here, but I think because men don't uh, go through menopause, perimenopause, and go through a biological hormonal change as we reach
Yeah.
midlife, there isn't that strong
Mhm.
sense of a marker to I'm crossing the threshold into a whole new era. Something
Right.
has stopped for me. We
Mhm.
don't know when we're not potent
Right.
anymore or something goes. And I know
Right.
andropause is a thing, but it's nowhere near that. So I think men have to invite men or like I'm involved with the Center for Men in Australia, which is kind of like a Richard Rohr sort of thing where there's
Oh,
rites of passages and things like that done. So that's been
mhm.
super encouraging. Not a lot of kickback, but
That's
some of the
great.
kickback I have had is from people who haven't read the whole book or have heard the premise and say,
Oh,
I'm uh, I'm a boomer. Are you calling me immature? And I was like, well, just read the book because I opened up the book. I had a
right.
number of beta readers, so I really wanted to write this
Mhm.
book collectively. It really is.
Right.
It came with a lot of early pushback before publication, so I made adjustments. The chapter we just talked about then on
Mhm.
decentering God,
Mhm.
I had to go
Yeah.
back and spell out. I'm talking about union from an ontological and mystical perspective,
Right.
not from a
Right.
contractual and law justice
Transactional.
transactional
Mhm.
perspective, because
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
idea of you being in Christ and the things I'm talking about don't work as well. But if I consider you, me, all things, uh, all creation caught up and reconciled to
Mhm.
Christ as we are, and the call is to be
Yeah.
now reconciled,
Mhm.
then everybody's in. And if
Yeah.
everybody's in, then everybody has access to be able to decenter. Um, and so that helped, but I had to kind of unpack a bit more because I might not have found
Yeah.
God in the Shinto man. Do for
Right.
example?
Right.
And
Right.
so
Yeah.
that's some of the pushback.
Yeah.
And then I opened the book with basically a get out of jail free card for those who are in that older generation, the boomer generation, who feel like I might have a go of them and say, we've never been here before. And you guys, all your elders were wiped out. Like you grew
Yeah.
up as
Yeah.
you are now the longest living generation who've grown up without a lot of examples and role models and wisdom transition because two world wars, consumption, the
Yeah.
industrial age,
Yeah.
institutionalization, globalization, all these things made it near impossible for you to look up like some of your Eastern brothers and sisters, and look up and say, here's what an elder does, here's what they don't do, here's what they feel like. You never had that. So you have a get out of
Yeah.
jail free card. There's hardly any books written on this because we haven't been here before. So I've had some people
Right.
actually say it's helped me love my parents more, and I have had some people who are
Oh,
in
wow.
that older age bracket say, thank you, this has been on my heart and mind and a bit of a grief for a long time, that I never had it. We had lots of money, we had lots of opportunity,
Yep.
but we just never had elders. They were all gone or traumatized or war torn. If we didn't live together, they are somewhere else in the globe. So I think there's a deep grief with that. And so the book's also an invitation to elder. Now we get to imagine, Catherine, what could this look like? We get to imagine,
Wow.
and then
Hmm.
become. So the pushback has been light, but in my some of my
I'm
academic
glad.
training, you learn to include and make room for some nuance and make room to counter
Yes.
some arguments before they come up.
Right. Well, which is brilliant because, well, I'm really glad that this has been embraced because, I mean, even if, I don't know, theologically you're not struggling with it, it is a struggle because a lot of this is kind of a death to self, right? To death to self in the center, a death to ego. We don't like that. Um, and uh, but there's such a life and there's a sort of a rebirth with what that looks like. And I love the fact, and one of the things that I was admiring so much just about hearing you and your journey that's been sprinkled throughout the book is that you've had a lot of experience with other cultures, Eastern cultures, other cultures, that they carry this well or better, right? Than we. I mean, we don't even sort of think about it. And so you've been able to sort of be challenged in that way, but also shake us up in a good way that we need to be shaken. That um, that there's more, that this is actually something that we need to embrace. And even I love that you talked about decentering death, but also part of that being embracing death in a sense of death and taxes, the inevitability. I know some people, push back on that, um, but, but I think there's a maturity in it.
Mm.
And I can't remember what the quote was. There was something about not being able to truly embrace life until we recognize that there is death,
Mm.
and that we can be walking fully alive, and not just this sort of denial of reality that we are people that that death is a thing, death is a reality, it's all around us, and we tend to push it away. We don't like to talk about it. And I mean, you're part of what you do is being around this. I mean, I did internal medicine, which is adult medicine, a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
death. And so in a geriatric population, but this is very, very true. I didn't know if you wanted to speak to that.
Yeah. My job, the job in aged care has exposed me to more death, than some jobs like in medicine and healthcare, you're exposed to more death by vocation
Mhm.
than most people would be
Yeah.
in several lifetimes. The, One of the things I realized as I encountered some of my first, dead bodies, etc., was this is or sat with people in their last hours and days, and their families, etc. This is real. This is going to happen to me. I am 45 at the time. This is the first time this has happened to me. And if I ask around, most people haven't, been around it. Uh,
Right.
there is a denial of death. Ernest Becker wrote that Pulitzer Prize winning book in the late 70s, The Denial of Death. We in the West have moved it all away. We don't want to see it. We
Mhm.
have a strange obsession with it on TV, but I think that's impartial because we it gives us that distance from reality, because there is, well, if you're in the presence of death, it's very different, right? It's sobering. But eventually,
Right.
I don't know about you, Catherine, but you get used to it, not in a terrible
Yeah.
way.
You do.
It's like, as much as
Mhm.
a child is born, somebody dies. And so it
Mhm.
loses its sting and it loses its
Mhm.
denial, and you can begin to embrace life in a way and live knowing that this will happen. Um, and there's a strange freedom about it. There's a sobriety about it. I'm not living
Mhm.
this day as if I'm going forever, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we're lucky in our countries, Australia particularly. Some of our healthcare systems phenomenal. Most of us will have a good death, you know, in that the medication's
Mhm.
available, the care's
Mhm.
available,
Right.
taxes pay for a lot of
Mhm.
things, death from taxes.
Yeah.
But it can happen at any time, and as we get older, it's
Mhm.
getting closer. So, and there's
Yeah.
something beautiful about people who know that it's coming and are comfortable with it. As I mentioned before, I run a death cafe with a friend at the university that I am doing my PhD at and lecture at, and when we do a check-in at the start of those, the death cafe is this international movement. You just, yeah, eat cake, drink tea and coffee, and talk about death for a couple of
Okay.
hours, just in small groups. No big agenda, but where else do you do it? And some people will rock up and they'll be like, "Why'd you come?" And they're like, "I just thought hanging out with people that are happy to talk about death, they're my kind of people." Because it is a kind of person.
Yes.
Does that make sense? So I think
It does.
those that I meet, in the book I talk about this phenomena called gerotranscendence, where
Mhm.
only 1 in 5 people in the West experience this. But in countries where you're exposed to death, if I ask any of my Indian or Nepalese colleagues in healthcare, which there's plenty of
Mhm.
here in Australia,
Mhm.
lovely, beautiful,
Mhm.
caring people, they're like, "Oh, I saw my grandma die, I saw my auntie die. You know, death was
Yeah.
in the home and the body stayed in the
Right.
home or went straight to the temple. They had
Right.
beautiful
Mhm.
rituals around them." And if for them it's it's a very different sort of proposition, you know.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
gerotranscendence in those countries is nearly 100%, and this is this state where you are between life and death, and people will have these. We will go into almost transcendent states of appreciation of life as we enter
Mhm.
into death. It's a mental and psychological
Mhm.
state that would be envious. So in some countries, it's so hard to
Yeah.
test because everyone goes through it. But in the West, because there's a lot of fear and denial, and even amongst Christians who have been singing about the resurrection power and the death of Sting is gone, they're scared
Mm.
crapless about death,
Yeah.
which is sad because
True.
they've never been exposed. They
Yeah.
don't know what's coming, and their
Mhm.
kids don't want to know about it. And there's this huge
Mhm.
denial as if we're going to live forever, and you're just not. You're not supposed to. You're
Yeah.
supposed to shed your leaves and make room for others. This is the truth.
Yeah.
This is how all life cycle works.
Yeah.
This is life, death, and resurrection. And what it looks like on the other
Yeah.
side, we'll find out. But there will be death, and
Yeah.
it's better to live without denial. So yeah, the challenge is that we decenter death as something that we might be afraid of or
Mm.
ignorant of, and just come to
Mhm.
reconcile and be comfortable with that. And yeah, there's
Mhm.
the residents that know it's coming and are preparing for it. Gee, they have a better death, and
Yeah.
they're nicer to be around than
Yeah.
those who just are like, "I'm gonna live forever. It's not coming." Um, yeah,
Right.
so I wish that for me. I'm preparing, even though it's early.
Yeah. Right.
It's kind of on everybody, including myself. Yeah,
Yeah. Wow. And that's beautiful. You know, 'cause we want to be a blessing throughout our lives, right? And
absolutely,
so these things are coming, and you know, part of that is the aging process. You know, we're not you don't want to be a teenager forever. Goodness. Right. We there's an embrace of age that is important as well,
absolutely,
because you know I mean that doesn't bless anyone when you are just, I don't know, wanting to act like you're forever youthful. We have this obsession with
absolutely.
youth, and a sort of a lack of regard for the aged. And we miss out. We miss out so much because we tend to push that away. We don't want to have anything to do with that while we're
Mm.
just sort of obsessed in this. I didn't know if you wanted to speak to that
Yeah,
or
look, the word I use in the book a
um,
lot is inhabit. I think the
mhm,
call is to inhabit the age that we're in
yeah, yeah,
and the stage of life that we're in the era that we're in.
mhm,
So what does it look
mhm,
like for me to be a 47-year-old today in Australia,
mhm,
in this on this land? Um, what does it look like to do that? And it's going to be a different answer for you, Catherine, in your age and stage of life.
mhm,
But I'm
mhm,
not
mhm.
I'm not trying to inhabit a 35-year-old Dave or a 70-year-old Dave.
Right.
Who am I today, and what
Yeah.
does it look like here? And are there things that I perhaps haven't brought along that I need to? And are there things I haven't let go of that I really should be letting
Mhm.
go of? What does it
Yeah.
look like to inhabit me in this day and this age and this stage of life? And that's a good question for somebody to have with God and to have
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
others. Um, poet David White, has this great little exercise he does is he'll ask people close to him, are there some conversations I need to stop having? Is there something I've just been on loop
Oh,
for a
that's good.
long
That was good.
time?
Yeah.
What do I need to stop talking about? What's that thing that happened 15, 20 years ago that I need to let go of? Oh, I
Just
traveled the
wanna
world and
know.
I did that. I used to be a firefighter. I used to be in the army. Not
Mhm.
that they're not important, but what are you now? What is
Yeah.
happening
Yeah.
now? What's
Yeah.
happening in your grandchildren's life? What is happening
Mhm.
in you and with you and in this day and age that's important to you? To be present is ironically, it's actually to be present to who you are and where you are in life. And I
Mhm.
think that is more difficult than a lot of us think it is.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
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 And part of that I
Yeah.
should add is practicing grief, learning to grieve well so that you can let go of things. Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah. This letting go is so important because we tend to just hold on and to things that we need to let go of and not grab a hold of things that we need to embrace.
Mm.
We need to really flow in this embracing and releasing in the cycles of life that we have and the things that we go through. That's just such wisdom. Wow. Well, this has been beautiful. I know you have a place to be, and we're kind of getting at the top of our time limits. I want to honor that. Where can people find your book? First of all,
Decenter Everything's available on Amazon. If you're in Australia, you can buy it through me. Helps me put food on the table. At davidtensen.com. So if you go to davidtensen.com, there's 100 links. All
Mhm.
my writing, everything that I do, I write and blog a lot and create. I love writing, so I write a lot there. And all my other books, The Wrestle, which is probably the most popular um, poetry collection
Mhm.
I've built, they're all
Beautiful.
all
Yeah,
available on where good
yeah.
books are found.
Your poetry is
Oh,
breathtaking. It
thanks.
really is, and it speaks in such a deep level. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that as
Should we
well.
finish on a
It's
poem? Do you
been
think
wonderful.
that might be good? What do you think?
Yes, I was going to ask you if you wanted. That was
All
perfect.
right.
Great minds think
Uh,
alike. That's a thing.
all right. One of the ones I wrote is called "Fat Souls," and this is in the chapter of called "False North." And I borrowed this just
Mhm,
quickly from a term um, that philosopher Bernard Loomer uses when he talks about the volume of life that you can take in. And I think is one of the best examples of something that is a great goal in eldership is to have a fat soul. And Patricia Adam Farmer's uh, turned his essay into some great book on being a fat soul. So here it is. Our souls are a river in flow, whose banks and bed are built by every interaction, whose ways and waters change with every passing breath. I want to be a wide river, not a narrow brook you simply step over and forget, but wide enough to be considered before crossing. I want to be a slow river, not an ocean so wild the innocent dare not enter, but slow enough that even the lame feel safe to wade in. I want to be a deep river, full of life and nourishment, moving through nations with many streams, unable to be dammed by dogma or doubt. One day, one fine and inevitable day, we will find ourselves emptied out, emptied into the great ocean of things, adding to it our own minuscule moment. But until that moment, until the moment my soul ceases to be held as this body, the kind of soul I want to be, I really want to be, is a fat soul, a big, fat, and generous soul.
Wow, amen. That's beautiful. That is such a gorgeous desire. Wow, I love that so much. Wow. Well, David, so people can find you. What's your website again?
DavidTensen.com.
DavidTensen.com.
Tensen.
So, yeah, wonderful.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Well, this has been a joy. I hope I can have you back sometime.
Of course.
And wow, thank you so much for your work. You have such a depth of perspective that it's beautiful and it's powerful and it's challenging, which is good. I love a good challenge.
Thank you.
So it's good.
Thanks, Catherine. Lovely to be with you.
Love it. Wonderful. Well, it's been wonderful. Everybody like, share, do all the things. Go get his books, plural. And we will all be growing on this journey together. So wonderful. All right, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you, David.
Have you ever thought God loves everyone but me? It's like you can believe for everyone else, but when it comes to you, there's this gnawing doubt. Beloved, you're not alone. Mercy felt the same way. She was unemployed, depressed, and fighting suicidal thoughts. She believed God loved everyone but her. But as she encountered love, everything began to shift. She realized he'd been with her all along, and that truth set her free. Today, she wakes up with compassion towards herself that she never thought possible. That's why I created Pursued by Love, a free 90-minute love encounter with the one who is madly in love with you. It's not a lecture, not another sermon or a to-do list. It's a sacred space where you can finally stop striving and simply receive love. Click below and come encounter the God who's been pursuing you your whole life.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Perspectives with Catherine Toon. For additional information and resources, please visit catherinetoon.com.